My biggest question I wanted to ask you, and I'm gonna get kind of schematic here with you.
Yeah.
So the how to stop Patrick Mahomes,
Mhm.
or the best approach to stop Patrick Mahomes. So there's a connection here. Joe Woods uh, got ready for 2 weeks last year as the defensive backs coach for the 49ers
Mhm.
to face these very same Chiefs in the Super Bowl
Mhm.
under Saleh, and they ran that Seattle cover three press bail. That they ran like 90% of the time, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then got burnt on the infamous, two jet wasp or 22 jet
Right.
wasp that back into the void area that they vacated there for Hill, and he kind of waited for that ball forever on that infamous third down that they end up going on to win the Super Bowl. But that defense, uh, Joe Woods has brought to Cleveland. They don't run it all the time, but it's in their arsenal, right? They
Mhm.
run some of that cover three, and for 3 quarters, San Francisco did a pretty good job holding down the Chiefs with that coverage and that scheme. The Chargers this year deployed that same scheme, and I think they held the Chiefs to like 20 points in
Mhm.
a pretty good game.
Yeah, it was a good game.
And watched a film breakdown on that game, and so that defense has a record of having some success against the Chiefs. And Joe Woods has a record of playing the Chiefs and preparing for them for 2 weeks and losing in the Super Bowl to them. So he's familiar with a lot of the things that they do. So I don't know if they'll go that route, but seeing the Chargers be successful with it is certainly a reference point to go back to. To me, the other way, in doing my research, that has sort of worked, because you can't really stop the Chiefs or stop Patrick Mahomes. You're just trying to slow him down a little bit,
Mhm.
right? The other way would be the New England way, and that would be to dare them to run the ball, light boxes, exotic, different looking, unconventional fronts, daring them to run the ball a lot, and playing a lot of coverage, mixing coverages up often to try to just give different looks to Mahomes, and dare them to run the ball against you.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what, I think that New England's approach was, or Belichick's approach has been simplified a lot,
Mhm.
obviously. A lot of his coverages have, he's got guys where he can, do like little robber stuff here and there, and they're very exotic in their coverages in New England. So certainly that is more effective for them. But if you had to choose which of the two you think would be more effective against Patrick Mahomes after, you've seen the Super Bowl, I'm sure you saw the Chargers game, and I'm sure you remember the games against New England. What do you think is the best way to approach trying to slow down Mahomes and this juggernaut of Kelsey and Hill and Edwards-Helaire or Le'Veon Bell? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's great, Brett. That's great analysis and great look at all the types of defenses that have been successful, and some probably that have not been successful against the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I sort of see it happening for the Browns, if they're going to do it, is I'm a big fan of what a lot of people will call this. It's not a new defense, but we ran it when I was in high school, and when I was coaching high school football. I coached for 11 years. We ran the same defense. We called it the 4-2-5, and what we did is we sort of dared teams to run the ball at us, right? By having five defensive backs or five defensive back types, right? One of those was generally a pretty quick linebacker type. So in essence, it was a 4-3 defense, but we called it a 4-2-5 because that one extra player was definitely a little bit more athletic than your typical middle or outside linebacker. So I think the more people you have from 8 yards of coverage dropping back, the better you're going to do against this team. No one's going to play man against this team. They're too fast. They're too big. With Kelsey as the post, I call him the post up man. Use a basketball analogy, right? You get him posting up, and you got players with the speed, because what the Chiefs do is, as fans will watch them, they not only use their speed vertically, they use it horizontally, right? They
Yep.
stretch the field horizontally just as much as they do vertically. Their
Yep.
biggest plays come when you get Tyreek Hill going just 8-9 yards going straight across the field as fast as he possibly can. So nobody's going to run man against him. So I think the more different colored jerseys you have back there for Patrick to try to pick out and who's who, I think the better chance you're going to have. And then the next step after you've played that cover 3 or you've played that 4-2-5 like nickel type package and you're daring them to run is what I would call a mush rush. I think a traditional rush against Patrick seems to be sometimes ineffective. The Saints did it. The Saints really baffled Patrick for most of the game by rushing in a way that was almost like old school, like colonial war, right? Like the British versus the Revolutionary Army, like where they just kind of marched their defensive linemen up the field. And they tried to take away those little pockets that Patrick could kind of pop up into and buy that extra little bit of time, right? Because he does have great vision. But if you take away that extra little pocket and you can methodically rush him and get up in his face and not give him and get that push and not give him that little, like, because, the traditional rush, right? Picture the 2 tackles and then your guard and center, and picture the 2 defensive end types rushing up the field and creating that bow. And then
around,
what happens is if you go too deep on Patrick, he's gonna scooch up over the where the tackle washes the guy past. He's going to get that extra little second. He's going to find Kelsey. He's going to find somebody horizontally or vertically stretching the defense, and he's going to find it. But if you can march the defensive line up the field, look, I'm no defensive line coach, defensive coordinator. I don't know how to teach that or coach it. But when I see plays that break down for the Chiefs on offense, it's when you've taken away that little pocket for Patrick to move up in and get that extra second, half a second for him to let that team use their speed. And once you do that, that's where he's most effective. And I think if the defensive coordinators can find a way to combine those two things, a lot of bodies deep, 6-8 yards back and in a zone type configuration with sort of a mush rush. Let's forget about sacking Patrick Mahomes. Let's not worry about sacking him. Let's try to methodically move that offensive line back into his face and don't let him have that step up. Because once he gets that, he's great on the edge, but he's not like he's not Lamar Jackson on the edge. So if you can just, if a defensive end is going against the tackle and all of a sudden Patrick breaks to roll out, a good defensive end can shed that tackle and go get him and get in space. You just you just can't let him break the containment. But if you can kind of stay there with him and mirror him it's almost like 4 guys mirroring him, really, if you think about it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I think that gives the Browns a good chance to shut him down a little bit. And then they'll force him to run, and then it's up to whatever Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Le'Veon Bell can do. So, and the Chiefs have a good line. They have, I love their line. I love what Andy has done as their coach, former player, Bears standout and great. But they're not the old hogs from, the old Washington days either that can just mash you, So those are the things I think about, Brad. If I were a defensive coordinator, I would try to do.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Against Mahomes, you can't. I think of Myles Garrett, and every time it's a 3rd and long, you just see him go flying past the quarterback, and he's just trying to bend back, and you just can't do that with Mahomes because you just open up running lanes, you open up lanes where he can step up and throw the ball, and to your point about man-to-man, Browns learned the hard way against Lamar Jackson trying to play man-to-man. Same thing with Patrick Mahomes. If you got corners and safeties and guys turning their heads the other way, Mahomes is going to run. Same thing with Lamar Jackson. So it's just something you can't really do against quarterbacks that way this day and age. Is play a lot of man, maybe sprinkle it in, but if you do it a lot, you're going to have a hard time. And rushing up the field like that, like you said, it has to almost be a controlled rush. You called it the mush rush, but it really has to be controlled and stay in front of him. Yeah. And it's not about the sack. You're absolutely right. And
so get that out of their mind.